Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with This Week in Cannabis Investing News from February 14th to the 20th. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And then, of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top companies that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you're ready. We're going to start this week with some news that I've already reported on, but just to recap the success that Colorado is seeing 7 years into the most mature market in the US. Here's how much money was spent on cannabis in Colorado last year, as Colorado has now surpassed $12 billion total in cannabis sales since 2014. And so if one state can do this, we can imagine that many other states will follow in time, as Colorado has set a new record for cannabis sales in a single year. As in 2021, Colorado had more than $2.22 billion in cannabis sales, according to the Colorado Department of Revenue, which breaks the previous record of over $2.19 billion in 2020, which is very impressive again for a state which is 5.7 million people, although they do see a lot of tourism, helping them surpass $2 billion in tax and fee revenue and $12 billion in cannabis sales to date since retail cannabis sales began in 2014. And that's why I always refer to them as the blueprint, because if one state can do this very successfully, many other states can follow in their footsteps and realize the benefits of ending cannabis prohibition with the tax revenue it brings in, the jobs that it provides, and the opportunity for its citizens. So great job, Colorado. Again, on to this one. So this was this past week, but Tom Engel reports that a congressional committee is holding a hearing partly focusing on challenges faced by small and minority-owned cannabis businesses, bringing light to the fact that SAFE would mostly help small businesses and minority entrepreneurs not only lower their cost of capital so they can start in the industry, but it would get $25 billion in cash off the street so that that cash could go into banks and they can use credit cards, as opposed to being targets for armed robberies and criminals that know that they hold the cash. And so we do have the Minority Cannabis Business Association testifying, and thank God we've got Rep. Perlmutter, our cannabis champion, on the panel chair, who's the lead sponsor of the Safe Banking Act. And we know Perlmutter is not seeking re-election this year, and for that reason, he is going to do whatever it takes to get the Safe Banking Act passed in whichever bill he can attach it to. And so he has given us his confidence that he thinks it will pass in some form by the end of this year. And of course, it goes to show that he's a rep for Colorado. He's been pushing for this since 2014, and at some point, it is going to have to become policy because it makes sense, and it does go to help make America a lot safer than it is now. And so on to some other news. As Jungle Java reports, Dan tapped into his piggy bank and bought some stuff that was on sale today for the Advisor Shares MSOS ETF. Here are the changes that he made to the holdings for February 18th, 2022. So this is as of end of day Friday. While the cash position did remain quite strong at $29.8 million in cash versus $34.38 million in cash to end the day Thursday. So while he did do some shopping, while we did end the day red, most of the market was red, but we did jump back up from where we ended up seeing Friday lows. So nonetheless, if you wanted to grab more information on that, the links will be down here just to break that down if you wanted to. Onto this one from Todd Harrison. As the Cali Senate Majority Leader just dropped SB 1074, and from my understanding, this is just the cultivation tax. So this is still a massive victory for any legal operators in California, as they've been begging for the politicians to drop any cultivation taxes so they can compete with the illegal market there, which is obviously very difficult and unlike any other market in the US. But this bill will discontinue, beginning in July 1st, 2022, the imposition of the cultivation tax. So basically, this bill will discontinue. There will no longer be a cultivation tax added to processors, which is a huge win. However, from my understanding, there is still quite a ridiculous excise tax, not touching it. So 15% now, it'll go up to 16% in 2025 and 17% in 2026. Now, that is a whole nother problem in itself, but it doesn't mean the fight is not over, and they might be able to get something like that lowered or changed over time. But nonetheless, this is a huge victory in the interim, as again, incremental progress is better than nothing at all. Well, we have some news out of MJ Biz Daily that California's wholesale cannabis prices have rebounded from their slump. And so just a bit of detail on this. The price of bulk flower, which hit rock bottom in November and squeezed growers financially, is starting to rebound amid an uptick in sales, according to several operators who told MJ Biz Daily they closed the books last month on a high note, which is very positive considering what we've been through, as the average price per pound of cannabis flower is up to about $750 to $1,100 for quality big buds and $300 to $450 for smalls, according to Shelton. But keep in mind, this is when the market's doing well, and typically from Q1 to Q2, January to summer, when there's less competition from the illegal market, who typically will grow grow over that period and then harvest in the fall and then cut down the prices, which that is a nice bump from November when prices bottomed at roughly $400 per pound for AAA grade flower amid a glut of cannabis, according to Devin Calloway, founder and president of EcoFarm Holdings, Thrive Society, a wholesale service provider in Santa Rosa. So clearly they're seeing the effects of the illegal market there, as Hudson told MJ Biz Daily via email that her company has experienced a minor increase in wholesale pricing up to $250 to $500 per pound for outdoor grown flower, up from lows of $150 to $250 per pound in November and December. So obviously seems like we've been through the worst, and basically just to end this off, now that wholesale prices are starting to rebound, executives are feeling optimistic. So while we were feeling a little bit nervous about California, based on the news we've been seeing heading through the winter, things do seem to be getting better in that environment, and we hope that it just continues to head up from here. Well, I wanted to provide this update from Chris Norman at C Norman Law, providing us with an update out of New Jersey as a resident of the state himself. And I wanted to share this because while I have shared some optimistic outlooks on New Jersey and the fact that if on February 24th, if their meeting went well and they could say, okay, 30 days from now, we're going to launch the adult use market, then we would see sales start by March 24th. However, he provides this take, and so I just want to share it with you so that we can plan accordingly. The stench of government incompetence seems to be real even from where he is, as the February 24th New Jersey cannabis meeting agenda is up, and consideration of resolution allowing adult use legal sales by medical ATCs is not on the agenda, unfortunately. So by all appearances, another delay, and so just wanted to share this so that we can all plan accordingly. And he does add, don't want to cause false hope, but the agenda can be updated between now and February 24th. So do keep that in mind. Obviously, it's the 20th, and we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of next week for that to be the case. But given the history of the Murphy administration, I wouldn't get my hopes up. So just wanted to share this. Thank you, Christopher Norman, for giving us this info. On to this one from the Office of Medical Cannabis Use. As for this past week, there were no new dispensary openings from February 14th to the 18th, but Florida's qualified patient count did increase to 681,052, which is an increase of 2,663 patients from last week. So good to see that continued growth over time as they recruit new patients for a safer, non-addictive alternative medicine in Florida. Well, the sales breakdown for this past week tells us the number of milligrams of THC sold, the number of milligrams of CBD sold, and the number of ounces of smokable flower sold. And so if you're invested in any MSO that has a footprint in Florida, you can keep tabs week over week whether they're increasing their market share or decreasing it and how they're performing in this very competitive state of Florida. On to this one from Curaleaf, as they announced they've expanded their Pennsylvania retail presence with dispensary openings in State College and Erie. So they're happy to announce the opening of its State College dispensary located at 1248 S. Atherton Street, State College, Pennsylvania, plus one additional location, Curaleaf Erie, located at 7891 Peach Street, is expected to open in early March, pending final regulatory approvals. And so with that, Curaleaf's latest locations in State College and Erie will increase the company's footprint to 16 dispensaries statewide and 127 across the country as they continue to expand. On to this one from Columbia Care. They bring their award-winning Cannabist retail experience to New York and celebrates the rebrand of a Brooklyn dispensary. So they've announced that its Brooklyn Heights location, located at 44 Court Street, is the first of its 4 dispensaries in New York to complete the transition to Cannabist, the company's new retail experience. So good to see Columbia Care continue to expand and rebrand before New York's adult use program really gets going. Well, they've also announced that they've continued their momentum in West Virginia with the opening of a second Cannabis location as well. So on Friday, they announced that the Cannabist Beckley, its second dispensary in West Virginia, located at 300 Gallery Plaza in Beckley, is now open. And this is the second of 5 dispensaries that Columbia Care will open in the state this year. And so while they are focusing on important states like New York, there are some less competitive states like West Virginia that other MSOs haven't even bothered to get into, but Columbia Care may have made a smart move by getting their footprint in there early, and of course, not waiting to expand. Well, Tilray launches medical cannabis products in Malta, so they're happy to announce that its medical cannabis division, Tilray Medical, has completed its first sale of medical cannabis in Malta, as Tilray's EU GMP medical cannabis products are now available in pharmacies across Malta, providing patients with safe and reliable access to high-quality medical cannabis. So it is great to see at least Tilray is expanding their brands in the medical markets into more states in Europe, but do keep in mind Malta is a very small country, therefore it has a very small population, and therefore this will likely not be a driver of sales for Tilray brands, at least in the near time. But good to see them continuing to expand their brand and get out there as a safe medicinal alternative. So on to this one from Todd Harrison. We've got Roth on U.S. cannabis. State of the cannabis industry. The long-term growth story is intact, however, near-term headwinds are expected. So you can pause to read if you like. Keep in mind this is not advice. This is just one point of view from an investment investment firm, Roth, on U.S. cannabis, but at least you can compare it to what you already know to help you make better investment decisions over time. Well, we've got this one from AGP on U.S. cannabis, so thank you, Todd Harrison, for sharing this one as well. And so this is just fourth quarter 2021 thoughts and preview as they anticipate what's going to come in March as the MSOs do start releasing their earnings in less than like 2 weeks. So wow, time flies when you're having fun, but you can pause to read if you want to check this out. And then on to this one from Carl Quintilla, who I think is an author, possibly a former analyst, but this was interesting and I wanted to add it in as the number one reason for the trucker shortage, according to a Wells Fargo conference call, is nationwide cannabis testing. Go figure. And so he just adds a bit of color to this and the perfect reason as to why you just deschedule cannabis across the country, let states have their own laws, and that way in states where cannabis is already legal, you don't have trucker shortages because there's just no issue with mandated drug testing. So the reason being very simple, and some of you know this, and some this may be new, it's really about drug testing. We've legalized cannabis in some states, but obviously not all, but some. And what you have is what you have as a trucker is you have a federal mandate for drug testing. And so what we've done is we're excluding a significant portion of that trucker industry, which is really silly, but a product of the status quo because cannabis is still a Schedule 1 substance where it never belonged in the first place, but because cannabis is federally illegal still, although it shouldn't be, that is a problem again in many other industries like the trucker industry. And so it's going to make a very tight market even worse if we don't change the federal illegality. But if we did, boom, we would see many domestic issues solved just by ending cannabis prohibition and righting the past wrongs as we should. So on to some state news. As Marijuana Moment reports, bill to create state-run cannabis shops in New Hampshire approved by House. And this is a big deal because this is the only state so far that has proposed state-run cannabis shops. And so we'll get to another story after this, but New Hampshire House of Representatives on Wednesday approved a bill to legalize cannabis through a state-run model. But pro-legalization advocates are sounding the alarm about the specifics of the proposal because, of course, if it's not state-run, then it's a private market and it allows citizens of the state to become business operators, and it gives them opportunities as entrepreneurs to join into the space, right? And while this isn't new, as in Canada, some of our provinces have a provincial run model while others don't. It doesn't take a genius to look at the data and tell that the private run models are a lot more successful than the provincial run models, but nonetheless, this is a first in the US. As the legislation from Rep. Dale LaBasse cleared the chamber in a 235 to 119 vote, despite facing resistance from people on both sides of the broader cannabis debate. The action comes about a month after the House passed a separate non-commercial legalization bill that also elicited criticism. The bill is a compromise by many who favor recreational cannabis and many who, like me, that have traditionally opposed recreational cannabis, a boss said on the floor. It creates a policy like no other state that works for and serves the people of New Hampshire, so they say. The time for talking is over, he said. It's time for us together to take action and to deliver this. And so under the proposal, which must still go before the House Finance Committee because of its fiscal components, and then receive another floor vote before advancing to the Senate, so it's still very early, adults 21 and older would be able to purchase cannabis from state-run dispensaries operated by the New Hampshire Liquor Commission. They could possess up to 4 ounces, but home cultivation would continue to be criminalized, one of the chief complaints from the activists. While state regulators would have until October 1 to adopt rules for the registration and regulation of cannabis establishments and cannabis cultivation facilities, they would then have another 2 months to create regulations on issues like advertising, labeling, civil fines, security, and THC limits. And while some advocates had hoped that the legislation would be defeated so that lawmakers could consider alternative reform proposals to create a legal cannabis market that more closely aligns with those established in other states, it seems like they weren't successful. And while that is a very fair argument because it would allow individual citizens of New Hampshire to join the industry and potentially start their own business, at the same time, this is what makes America unique as it's the laboratory of democracy. And so we do have many other states that have that free market, but it will be interesting to see if New Hampshire goes a different route and to see how that will play out over time. So it's not a bad thing, but still early on, and I will provide updates. However, what is interesting is that Sammy J points out, what are the chances of a state being forced to pay 280E, like New Hampshire, to the federal government? Never mind New Hampshire state's 7.25% on the punitive form of 280E to itself. This may be the quickest path to courts recognizing the absurdity of prohibition, i.e. path to descheduling. And so while this is very interesting, it just considers that this is the first state to consider doing the state-run model, but that means, what, is the state going to accept paying the ridiculous 280E tax charge? Probably not. So maybe New Hampshire has to be the sacrifice that's going to say, hey, we're going to be the state-run proposal, and that could help be the domino effect to get rid of 280E in time. And while this is still just speculation, it is a great observation from Sammy J. So thank you for connecting the dots and sharing that. And just to touch on what Synergy Canna Life adds, the devil is in the details. We shall see, but it would be super interesting for a state to become a market participant in a federally illegal business. business. And to say things are getting interesting is an understatement. I just can't wait to watch this unfold in time. And so on to some news from other states for marijuana moment. As South Dakota lawmakers approve cannabis legalization and taxation bills in committee. And I love to hear this because while the citizens of South Dakota did vote to legalize cannabis on the ballot in November of 2020, and their governor actually tried to say that, no, you guys don't get to decide what's good for you. I get to decide. At least they have actually been able to get this done. As a bill to legalize cannabis in South Dakota was approved in a Senate committee on Thursday, sending it to the floor. And a separate panel advanced legislation earlier in the week to set up a tax scheme for an adult use cannabis market if legalization is enacted. These developments come as activists continue to explore ways to end prohibition legislatively or through the ballot, as South Dakota voters already approved legalization during the 2020 election, but the reform was struck down by the state Supreme Court following a challenge from the governor's office, which is again ridiculous, but at least democracy seems to be prevailing in South Dakota in the end. Now the Senate Commerce and Energy Committee has passed SB 3 in a 5-3 vote, sponsored by Senator Michael Rohl. The bill as amended would allow adults 21 and older to purchase and possess up to 2 ounces of cannabis from licensed retailers, while home cultivation would not be permitted, however, unlike under a ballot measure that activists had been collecting signatures for. So a little bit of progress, incremental, but nonetheless good news out of South Dakota, as that appears like it's finally coming into law. Well, this one comes out of Arkansas, as majority of Arkansas voters support cannabis legalization. Poll finds as activists pursue 2022 ballot initiatives. So 3 separate campaigns are seeking to place cannabis legalization on the Arkansas ballot this year, and a new poll shows that a majority of voters in the state are ready for reform. So good effort out of those in Arkansas. The survey from Talk Business and Politics and Hendrix College asked respondents about cannabis policy, giving them 3 options for what they think the legal status of cannabis in Arkansas should be. And about 54% said that they favor full adult use legalization, compared to 32% who said it should be legal for medical use only, as it is under current state law, and just around 11% who said it should be outright illegal. And so this is the 11% of Arkansas that you would never ever want to listen to. And put another way, nearly 9 out of 10 Arkansas support some form of cannabis legalization, and with majority support for recreational reform, that bodes well for the competing campaigns hoping to let voters decide on the issue in November. And with the prospect of a proposal to legalize recreational cannabis could be on the ballot this fall, we wanted to test voter attitudes on the issue. Roby Brock, editor-in-chief of Talk Business and Politics, said. So that's great news, and hopefully the citizens of Arkansas will be able to vote an overwhelming yes this fall in November. And then on to this one, as Kentucky Democrats file bills to legalize cannabis. So this is big, especially out of Mitch McConnell's state, and I imagine he never wants to see cannabis legalized there. But 3 Kentucky Democrats, including a top party official in the state Senate, have unveiled sweeping bills to end cannabis prohibition by legalizing sales to adults over 21, establishing a medical cannabis program for registered patients, and expunging past convictions that the sponsors say never should have been charged in the first place. You got that right. Senate Minority Leader Morgan McGarvey, Senator Dave Yates, and Rep. Rachel Roberts introduced the 74-page legislation on Thursday. A competing Republican-led proposal filed in January would legalize only medical cannabis. Adding, our legislation is the comprehensive plan that Kentuckians deserve, and it builds on what's worked in other states while avoiding their mistakes, Roberts said. So while it is still very early, we do love to see this effort being made in Kentucky, and so I will update as this news develops. While this one comes out of Georgia, a new push at the state capitol to get Georgia's medical cannabis program on track seems to be working, as there could be hopes for thousands of patients waiting to get legal access to medical cannabis oil grown in Georgia. A bill filed Thursday at the state capitol is meant to unjam the Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission, as in July, the Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission awarded 6 licenses to companies to grow and manufacture low THC oil. However, those were formally protested by 16 other bidders. So it seems like 16 other bidders were angry that they were not awarded licenses that the 6 were awarded, and so they took legal action. And what's the resolution to that? Republican State Rep. Alan Powell of Hartwell says House Bill 1400 would grant licenses to those 16 that complained. We would have to take care of the 16, and we have them give a license of some sort, just one, not multiple, Powell said. If that is the will of the General Assembly to do that, that speeds up and gets it out of the court system and moves it forward. And so apparently the best way to get lawmakers to expand the number of licenses that they may hand out is to take legal action if you don't end up winning the lottery the first time around. And so just jumping over to this from New Cannabis Ventures, as Canadian retail cannabis sales increased 29% in December to record $382 million, which was great to see because it's in line with other U.S. states where we saw a lull in November, but to end the year off, we saw many record sales in December as people prepare for the holidays and into the New Year's. So Stats Canada released December retail sales for the country this morning, with cannabis sales increasing from November by 8.5% to 382.4 million. Sales were up 28.5% from a year ago, and so we do love to see that, as sales are, remaining to head upwards in Canada despite our small population. But as you can see, that is mainly driven by Ontario opening 120 stores a month starting January 2021, and that allowed them to go from sales in December 20th of 92.5 million up to 155 million by December 2021. Had they not opened 120 stores a month, they would not have seen that growth. So thank you, Ontario, for having the foresight to do that. And then, as we can also see, sales in Quebec did actually pick up from 48.9 million up to 55.5 million. That's the second most populated province in Canada. As in Ontario, we have about 14.5 million. Quebec, we have 8 million. And then lastly, Alberta carried their weight as well, with sales increasing from November, 59 million up to 65.7 million in December, while Alberta followed behind, up from 49.6 million up to 52. So this just goes to show that people want to spend in December to end the year to celebrate with their family. But nonetheless, great to see sales head up in the right direction as Canada finished 2021 off strong. While lastly, just a reminder that Europe is apparently on the cusp of legalizing adult use cannabis. And while this article is a bit older and it doesn't tell us what we don't already know, I just want to remind you to hold your horses until there's some sort of word of an official bill actually being filed in Germany, for example. That will speed this process up, because you can grab this link below if you want to read more into the history of countries legalizing, and apparently Germany's on the move. But just to end this off, at this time, adult use cannabis legislation still needs to be introduced in government sessions. But from what German friends have told me, passage is inevitable because all parties involved support the proposition. So while friends in the South and Luxembourg will see freedom of consumption for all adults, Germany will level up the movement by making it available commercially, not just personally. And so who's next, you might ask? With the Netherlands and Belgium to the west of Germany and Luxembourg, some feel adoption will trend in that direction. With the attraction of additional tourism and vibe with existing lifestyles and culture in Spain, the plausibility of the Iberian Peninsula converting to adult use status is high too. As we saw firsthand here in the States and eventually the Americas, the movement needs to start with just one city, then one state, and eventually one country. And while we are anticipating Europe, and that will be a very big market to venture into and to start investing in, the focus is on the US for right now, as the stage is set, and we just have to have the patience to see what unfolds over time. And that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned today? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video or you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Wednesday for a midweek update in the world of cannabis. Have a great weekend, everybody. Honk.